All right, so welcome to Lemaya. Or Mudbox, sorry. So basically, they have these like free ones that you can use here, like these pre-made models, and you can just sculpt right on those. If you want to play around with it, you can do that if you'd like. And it's got these little videos here. What we're gonna do is just go ahead, open, and you're gonna notice that when you open it, right off the bat, like the main things that it looks for are Mudbox and OBJs. So I'm just gonna go ahead and we have the Maya to Mudbox OBJ. Hit open, and then voila. Now you might get an error or something like that. Obviously we won't this time, because well, hopefully. But if your UVs are not good, it'll be like, hey, you have overlapping UVs, or if your model's bad, it'll be like you have non-manifold geometry or something, or too many verts on a point, kind of a thing. So in our case, at least in my case here, the model's pretty okay. So I'm just going to go ahead and go to display and turn off the grid, because I don't really find that particularly useful in this program. Now, the settings should be set up for Maya. If they're not, just go to Window, where are you, Hotkeys, and then you can see you can switch the hotkeys. So it might be on Mudbox. It should, the first time you open it, it should ask you should choose Maya, but if you didn't, just change it to Maya here. And if you change anything else, you just hit restore to Maya. And voila. Okay, you can also do the hotkeys there too if you want to see what they are. Quite frankly, if you know Maya, going into this actually isn't even really that big of a deal. So yeah, just you can rotate, whatever, like all the typical stuff. Just a quick overview of the interface real quick. So file does what you think it does, imports, exports, that sort of stuff. Edit, I don't really use any of the edits. Create, we're not going to use any of that either. Mesh, this is how you would add a new subdivision level, so and lower. So some of the stuff you might use here, I'm just going to tell you the hotkeys, but they're right here. You can see the hotkeys are on the side there, so if you need to know, that's where they are. Display deals with things with display. So right now you see it's not smooth shaded, but if you want to see, oops, not that one, sorry, display, go back, turn that back off. Display, and then where are you? Oh, you can turn smooth shade off if you want to see it in this manner instead. I don't find that particularly useful because we're probably going to have the normals softened. But if you need to turn anything off or something, obviously visibility is there. This deals with the UVs. We will be using this flattened UV space and unflattened UV space. So just so you get an idea of how it works, if you click flattened UV space, it goes like this, and it actually shows you the UVs like this, and then you can paint on them. And then when you want to go back, you just do unflatten from UV space, and then you're back at it. Cancel. So on and so forth. Render. You can have it automatically render out a turntable movie, which is kind of cool, but the quality it's a preview quality. Like, it's not going to look that great, so I never really used that. But I don't know. I mean, maybe if you're working with people. We don't really have to do too much with the windows, so that doesn't really matter either. There's a quick little UV view here, and image browser we don't really need. Over here is basically like your outliner that you would have inside of Maya. Just has all the stuff that's in there. You'll see layers. There's the object and the viewport filters. I don't really use any of these, but you can turn them on, and then like depth of field. So I have to let me select it too. Oops. I don't feel like dealing with it, but there's like tone mapper, so it gives it a tone, or add cavity ambient occlusion. And now he looks really scary. But honestly, I don't use those at all. So those were the only ones we're not even really going to use object lists. So I would just keep this on layers. And you'll see that in a little bit. And then it's actually a very simple program. It's very straightforward. So then the bottom here, see Sculpt tools, which deal with sculpting, much like what we were doing when we were in the ZBrush Core Mini. That's too many names. These are basically just sculpting tools. And you can see, and all the stuff you see here lines up to like the number. So if I hit 1, 2, 3, 4, and you can actually click in, middle mouse button? Yeah, you can middle mouse button and move them to change the order. So if you know you're always using just a couple, you can slide them on over there, and then, there they are. And then you can see like setting things here. So if you want to add some or delete some, you can do it there, or rename them. So you could potentially make like brushes and have like presets, but these work fine. So that's all the sculpt tools. So they're like what you would expect, and we'll cover that later. There's paint tools, which deal with painting. Okay, there's two things you basically do in here. You sculpt the model and you paint the model, and that's it. There really isn't too much more than that. They have these curve tools which you can use to, when you do, this is capable of doing retopology, auto topology, meaning that it will automatically, you can take any kind of crappy mesh, and it will automatically retopologize it, but it's just kind of random, you know what I mean? Oh, it's not random. It'll look at the geometry and try to do the best that it can, but it is always going to be better when you do it by hand. It's just the matter. One of the ways you can kind of control it is by using these curve tools. You can also use these curves as guides, just like you would use guides, let's say in like Photoshop. You know, you can put on those, what are they called? Maybe they're just called guides. And then you can draw lines and use them as like a ruler to draw across. That's kind of like what these do as well. You can use this to basically, let's say you got a model and you want to pose them. This will allow you to almost like put joints in it, kind of, and then you can kind of pose it. I don't ever use those. Select move tools. This deals more with like the geometry and stuff. I think I've ever used that. The only time I've ever used these is if I'm trying to paint or sculpt multiple objects. Then these become a little bit more useful, but quite frankly, you're only going to need these two. We're going to start with this one, and then you'll move over to this one. Now, over here on the right, if I can get my picture out of the way. Come on, baby. Get over there. Nope. No, almost had it. Almost had it. There. Okay. These are basically ways of handling this. So, like, let's just use Sculpt as an example. So let's say I'm doing Sculpt, and the regular Sculpt just, raises or lowers the surface. That's what it does. I can use these various things here, and they will, I can use this as a stamp. So much like when you use the brush tool, the tip can have a different alpha on it. These are just the alphas that you would basically be drawing with. Stencil will lay it over top of the model. So when you click on it, you go like this, and when you, on this, well, you can't see it because the resolution is too low. But you can basically like rub over, like if it's like an image, rub over it, and then that will leave an imprint. So it's like you're drawing through it. Just gonna click off. Make sure this is off as well. Fall off is the brush fall off. So basically, if I did this, it would just be straight 100% to the edge, and then this would have like kind of an even from the beginning to the end. This would be much more like a knife, like it would cut deep, right? That's basically what this is. Material presets, don't play around with this because this default looks pretty good. It's kind of the same thing you saw again when we were in the ZBrush Core Mini. These are just materials that slap on there. They do have like options that you can like change with them and stuff, but some of them are very not useful. Like they make it look cool, but they're not particularly useful while sculpting. So I would just leave this on the base material. Don't try to use any of these. It's not going to help you. Same thing with the lighting. The lighting is awesome, and you can actually, if you go to object list, you can actually see the lights, and you can even adjust them and things like that. But these are like preset lights, so theoretically, I'm assuming you can make your own. Yeah, so you can add your own lighting preset. These will make it look really cool. So maybe when you're done, if you want to play around with it, that's fine. But I don't generally suggest putting on there because once you put them on there, you like can't go back to default. Like that's the lighting set. So then you have to kind of choose which one you like. So default is right there. And then camera bookmark. So you could save camera positions, but honestly, you can just click on this. You can click these little arrows. They actually had this in Maya for a while, this little box thing. They stole it from 3D Studio Max. But I don't really find it particularly useful, but if you wanted to click on that, that's there as well. All right, so what we're going to do is we're basically going to put this on layers. What we're going to do is we're going to sculpt this dude, okay? First, because the sculpture will make sense with the, it'll inform how we paint it, right? So I want to make sure I sculpt it. Now, if you hit W, you'll see the wireframe, and you can see this is how many polys we have. Now, the way this works is that you can subdivide it, right? So if I hit Shift D, so Shift and then D like dead dog, that will create a new subdivision level and go to it, right? So if I hit Shift D again, it'll create level 2. And you can see it up here. It says how many polys are on there, and I can keep going up. Now, every time I make a new one, let's say I want to go back down a subdivision level, I just use page up and page down. So if I hit page down, it'll go down to level 0 and all the way to 0. So now I can go up and I can go down. So kind of like when we have polysmooth, you click on it and it subdivides the model. That's what this is doing. But what you can do is I can go up to the highest level. I can go up to whatever level, sculpt on that, and it will also reflect on all the other subdivision levels as well. And the reason why this is important, because what I can do is I can sculpt high resolution sculpt details, and then it will influence the one underneath. It won't work because there won't be enough polys to show the same level of detail, but any big motions I made will affect whatever would be on those lower levels. And then afterwards, we can compare based on the subdivision level, the high res versus a low res, and bake a normal map of the two. Okay, so that's kind of where the strength of it goes to. So as you go up, I can sculpt something. Let me hit W back off, and I'm just gonna, and then so it's the same hotkeys as Maya. So B will be brush size, and then I don't know if you've done any sculpting in Maya, but M is strength. So if you hold B left and right, and then M up and down, which is kind of weird, but so BM, bowel movement. So it's the same as Maya. So if I were to sculpt, let's say, a detail in here, right? I could still go down, and you'll see, shows up a little bit on this one, doesn't really show up on this one, and definitely doesn't show up this one, because there's just not enough geometry to support it. But let's go, let's undo what I did there. Make sure I'm on the highest level. Okay, let's just undo. Oh, it's really going to undo all the levels? That is not helpful. Just want to undo the brushing. Okay, I'm all the way up. Okay. So, but if I were to do, like, let's say a bigger thing. What's my fallout? Did I choose it? Oh, I did. See, it's doing. If I were to do a bigger thing, like this, and make it a little bit stronger. I'll hold an M. There we go. Make it stronger, right? So you can see that's definitely affecting them. When I go to the lower levels, it will affect the lower levels as well. So it doesn't undo that. So that's the lump sum of it. Now, here's the thing. You don't want to do what I just did, which is just sculpt right on it like I did. What you can do instead is, much like Photoshop, we can actually create layers, and we can create sculpt layers, okay? And the sculpt layers allow us to store the sculptures on them. So, but they are layer specific. So for instance, if I go to layer 2 and I create this new layer, right? When I go to sculpt on it, so I'm just going to go like this, right? And I can go to town, right? If I go up one, let's say to page 3, see how it turns into a no smoking sign? That means I can't sculpt on that one. That one, and you can see actually shows the level right there. See how it says L2? And if I go one below, I also can't. It's locked to that layer specifically. But what's cool about it is that I can turn that layer on and off, like if I don't like it. I can, just like you have opacity, I can change the strength of it. And you can even overdrive it. I can do like 200. And it's like way too much. But, okay. Now this is nice too, because let's say you're doing blend shapes for a bunch of different facial expressions. You could put each one of those on another layer and then have each layer be one of the expressions. And then you can actually mix them together by turning on multiple ones, and you can kind of sample how well it's working. There's a way of doing it. I haven't actually used it for that purpose, but I guarantee if you look up, you'll probably find video tutorials on how to, the process of it. I just don't personally care about that. And if I just really don't like it, I can just take this and trash it. And boom, it's gone. But if I sculpt directly on the model, I have no way of like deleting it or removing it or anything like that. So that's why you want to, whenever you're doing your sculpting, you want to do them on layers, because that way it's sort of non-destructive. If you do something you don't like, you can remove it. So actually, again, as an example, let's say I sculpt this and I don't like it. There's an erase tool. So where are you? Eraser. And I can just erase off that from that layer, which is pretty sweet. So, yeah. So, yeah. Let's trash that. Okay. So, okay. So, that's that. So, yeah. So we have Sculpt. That's the layers there. And Paint works the same way as well. So, but it's going to be a little bit different. So you want to switch to your Paint tab. You're going to switch to this. Don't do this yet. I'm just showing you. I mean, you can do it if you want with me, but you're going to start fresh. What you do is you make a new layer, and then you have to choose the resolution size. So we'll do, well, I guess I'll do big, 4096. I like to just do the PNGs because I like those. And then you'll see there's diffuse, specular, all the different things. So you see there's bump and normal map. We're not going to use those, but those exist as well. Diffuse is color. Okay, so when it says diffuse, just know that that means color. And you can choose the name up here, and then hit OK. And then you have your layer. There it is. And you can paint on this. Oops, I'm still on sculpture. And you can see the settings for this over here. So right now it's on generic. All right, and I'm using a stamp image. Don't use stamp image. And the strength is really weak. I must have been using this for something. There it goes. Wow, it's really slow. Okay, this might be a problem later. So it'll sculpt right, or it'll draw right on it, so on and so forth, right? And so again, I have the same thing where I have opacity here, so I can change the strength of it. I can turn it on and off. And if I make another layer, you'll see that basically it'll create folders for each section. So if I make another diffuse layer, it'll just be underneath this diffuse, and you'll see just whatever layers you have. You can stack them on top of each other. You can even use layer modes, where are you? I don't see you. Here's masks. I think right here. That's why I'm like, where is it? And you can choose like, burn or darken. It's not going to look like anything right now because I'm using black. Let's try doing like, I don't know, red or something. Okay, so right now it's on screen, so it's only going to show the lightness of it. But if I did multiply, it'll only show the darkness of it. There you go. Color dodge. Basically all the blending modes that you would expect to see in Photoshop, you can see here as well, which is pretty cool. And I kind of didn't show it earlier, but all the settings of what you have show up down here. So if I have this brush, all of its settings for it are here, and the same thing with the sculpt tools as well. You'll see them over here. And we'll play around with these when we actually go to work on it, okay? But you see there's two sections here. There's the sculpt and the paint section, okay? So I'm just going to go ahead and trash this, and we're going to go back to sculpt. But it's best to actually sculpt first and then go to the painting afterwards. Each have their own kind of strength. So I'm going to end this video here, and then the next one we'll just start sculpting this guy.